Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. We are so thrilled to have you with us at Teach the Shoah for this very special event. I am Jennifer Zunikoff. I am the storytelling director of Teach the Shoah, and I have with me Dr. Deborah Fripp, who is the president, who you'll get to know in a little bit, Lynn Feldman, who is our international coordinator and does a lot of our storytelling as well, and today is helping us so much with tech, and Dr. Mehak Burza. We are so glad to have you, Mehak. Thank you so much for being here, our storyteller tonight and our interviewer of our very special guest, Professor Zahava Scherz. We are so fortunate to have all of you. So as you're coming in and people are getting settled, please write in the chat, if you wish, what brought you here tonight or today, and let us know where you're from. We have people from all different places. So feel free to use the chat feature. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Fripp as you are looking at some of these beautiful pictures from Rutka's life. Of course, we're here to hear about Rutka's diary. Deborah.
Thank you so much. We are, as Jennifer said, Teach the Shoah. At Teach the Shoah, we are dedicated to ensuring that the stories of the Holocaust continue to be heard and told. And I can think of no better way than through these amazing women that we have to listen to tonight. And Jennifer, would you start by introducing us to Mehak? And as you do that, I'm going to take down these slides.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. So we have with us the incredible Dr. Mehak Burza. She is currently one of the board of directors and head of Global Holocaust and Religious Studies at the Global Center for Religious Research based in Denver here in the United States. Her PhD thesis is on literary representations of the Holocaust and assessment. Her primary interests include Holocaust, genocide studies, Jewish studies, gender identity, trauma studies, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. She is an assistant professor of English at the University of Delhi. She teaches English literature to bachelor's and master's students. She has presented her research papers at the Ackerman Center for Holocaust Studies in the University of Texas in Dallas, at South Atlantic Modern Language Association in Atlanta, and at the Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania. Her research paper and book reviews have been published in Contemporary Literary Review India. Her translations have been published in Purple Ink, the online journal of Brown University, Los Angeles. And on the creative front, her short story and several poems have been published in Visual Verse and the Trovelli Review. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Burza here, not only as a scholar, but also as a storyteller, a performer. Now, she is going to share with us about Rutka. And of course, this whole evening, this whole program is about Rutka and what we learned from her diary. And so let us share a little bit more about Rutka. Rutka's notebook chronicles the thoughts of Rutka Laskier. She was a 14-year-old adolescent who was interned in the Bedzin ghetto in Poland. With the diary entries from January 1943 to April 1943, Rutka's notebook is one of the short but deep, as you will say, shortest existing diaries of the Holocaust that have been found so far. The diary was brought into the public realm in 2006 after Rutka's half-sister, who we have with us today, Professor Zahava Scherz, authenticated her existence as a member of the Laskier family. Professor Scherz, in collaboration with Time magazine and Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel, the Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Authority, published the diary without any edits or rewrites. Adam Seidlowski published the Polish version of the diary in May 2006. that was launched in the Bedzin Municipal Theater. 2 years later, in 2008, the Yad Vashem publications published the English version. Thereafter, the diary has been translated into a dozen other languages across the globe. While the original version of the diary is kept in the Yad Vashem Museum, a copy of the diary is kept with Professor Zahava Scherz. The published version of the diary encloses the 60-page notebook, along with the corresponding pictures of the Laskier family, provided by Professor Scherz, who has also written a detailed introduction, as well as many write-ups by the people who knew the Laskier family are also included in that published book. We are so fortunate to be introduced to Rutka through Dr. Burza. Mehak Burza, when you're ready, we will spotlight you and take your time. And we are so delighted to hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'll begin the story. January 19, 1943. I cannot grasp that it's already 1943, 4 years since the hell began. The days pass by quickly, and each day looks just the same, just like the previous one. Every day, it's the same frozen, oppressive boredom. I see many people taking their papers and getting out of this ghetto. We also hope to get ours done soon. And for that, I've already had my photo taken. Well, in reality, I'm quite beautiful. But I wonder if my photograph looks good. January 28th. I'm stupid, terribly stupid. Yesterday, when I went with my friend Nina and I was walking past the market square, I met another of my friends, Mika, and I shouted, "Hey, Mika!" And although she clearly heard me, she did not respond and kept on walking. How rude. I just cannot forgive myself for calling her. And now, between her and me, it's over. Besides, I prefer Nina. She's easier to confide in. You know what happened next? Well, when Nina went in the shop to buy something, I waited by the shop gate. And suddenly some of my friends turned up and they thought I was waiting for Jumek. And then they started teasing me with Jumek's name. People have such old-fashioned ideas about friendships between adolescent girls and boys. Well, they're just incapable of grasping the new world mentality. I like him, but they said he's my best friend. He is my best friend. Perhaps more. All right, Rutka, enough of writing now. You know what? I have begun to notice that I feel very reassured after writing in my diary. And it feels as if I have confessed to somebody. Sometimes I wonder if Jewish women are allowed to confess to a Christian priest. Wonder whom I should ask about it. January 29th, Janek did not come. January 30. Today, 100 demons are running wild inside me. Everything has just gotten very complicated. Everything is messed up. I just don't know what's going on with me. Sometimes all disasters happen at once. By the way, Janet did arrive, but he left immediately. I'm so furious. I would very much like to... Nothing. January 5, 1943. The rope around us is getting tighter and tighter. It'll be so hot and unbearable in this ghetto during the summer months. Oh, I'm already so flooded with the atrocities of war that even the worst reports have no effect on me. Oh God, can it be possible that this war will end one day? That one day I'll go out of this ghetto without wearing the yellow star. If this happens, I'll probably lose my mind from joy. Good Lord, Rutka, you're probably going crazy. You're calling upon God as if he exists. The little faith that I used to have has been completely shattered. If God would have existed, he would certainly not have permitted that human beings be thrown alive in furnaces, the heads of little toddlers be smashed with butts of guns, and shoved into sacks gassed to death. It all sounds like a horrific story. February 6th. Something has broken in me. Today, I suddenly recall the day of August 12th, last year. It was the day when I first saw what disaster meant. We reported for selection at 4 p.m. Mom, Dad, my little brother was sent to one group, which meant they would return home. And I was sent to the other, which meant to a labor camp. I was made to wait in a building. I stayed there till 1 a.m. and then I ran away. I jumped out of the window. I didn't realize that I was biting my lips out of fear all this while, so badly that my lips bled. I was completely torn apart. The weirdest thing out of all this was that I didn't cry at all. At all. I think I've now become a daily witness to these horrors, and I'm writing as if nothing has happened. As if I were in an army experienced in cruelty. But I'm young. I'm just 14. And I haven't seen much in life. And I'm already so indifferent. Now, I'm terrified when I see those uniforms. I think I'm turning into an animal, waiting to die. Now to everyday matters. Janet came by this afternoon. While we were talking, he suddenly blurted out and said that he would very much like to kiss me. I would have allowed myself to be kissed by the only person I loved. but I feel so indifferent towards him. Maybe, but I won't let him kiss me. I'm afraid that it would destroy something very beautiful between us. Well, to be honest, I'm also afraid that Janek will disappoint me. January 15th. I haven't written in a while. Janek hasn't seen me since a week. When you talk to him, he's so polite, so reserved. But sometimes he just shows off his superiority, and I don't like him then. Actually, I still like him. And eventually, somebody or the other will kiss me in life. So let it be Janek. Things with Mom are getting more and more complicated. She doesn't understand that it's difficult for me to open up my heart to her. I do love my parents, but sometimes they are so mean to me that it hurts so much. And then I also become hurtful and bad. I plan to invite my friends again on Saturday. We'll all sit in this small room. The entire day, I'm just walking around the room. Okay, Rutka, enough writing for today. March 1st. Once again, I took a long break from writing, during which we managed to reduce our apartment to this one small room. Yesterday, I again met Janek. I told him to come, so he came and we talked. And I think I'll call him again some other time. It's so boring at home. Boring. And there's nowhere to go. On our streets, there are no Jews. Today, I got the permit to work in the Samling textile factory. Maybe I'll feel less bored. March 8th. What is happening to you, Rutka? You are incapable of controlling yourself. This is certainly not good. I must pull myself together and not wet my pillow with tears. Why am I even crying? Because of Janek? No, certainly not. Then why? Probably because of freedom. I'm just sick and tired of these grey houses, of the steady fear in everybody's faces. April 24th. The summer is already here. The sun shines so brightly. Apple trees are blooming. And all you have to do is to sit in this suffocating and stinking textile shop and work. At home, I'm equally bored. The entire day, I'm just walking around the room. And I have nothing to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mehak. Let's take a moment to be silent and breathe in the story. Mehak, thank you so much for bringing Rutka's story out of the past into the present, out of history into now. I would love to just say a few things that I especially appreciate about your story, Rutka's story, but the way you told it. And of course, everyone here listening, we could feel your attention across the Zoom land. Please write in the chat any appreciations you would like to write as I speak. So Mehak, as many people here know, we all know from your name that you are a scholar, that you're a Holocaust studies, really a scholar, a teacher, a historian. And yet what you bring takes all of that and infuses it with life and expands upon the facts that we know and really honors Rutka in a way that no matter how much scholarship was given to her diary, just couldn't be done without your gifts, your willingness to illuminate her story and to help us feel her presence. From the interweaving of her relationship with Janek and her friends, her female friends, and her parents, and the atrocity she's witnessing as she's trying to get through those hard years of being 14, you bring it into reality, those things that we cannot believe could possibly coexist, these normal life situations and these absolute horrific experiences and witnessing. When you talk about her, the lips bleeding as she's running home, as she's escaping from this building where she's going to be deported. I mean, the understatedness that she provides with that, right? Mm-hmm. Almost unbelievable that she is 14 and she is going through this, and this is part of her daily world. She is no longer a witness. She is becoming a victim. And somehow in your understated and direct and very empathetic way, you bring that to life. So you can keep reading what these beautiful comments people are writing, and we can keep writing throughout our session. But I'd like to now hear from you. Feel free to respond to any of that. But we want to hear from Mehak to let everybody else know. We want to hear a little bit about her process. So she has this diary. It's quite short, but there's way more in there than she could tell us, even if she had 2 hours. So she had to make a lot of choices and how this was expressed. So I'd love her to share with us a little bit about how she made those decisions.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everybody. I mean, these comments sort of keep me going. And of course, this diary figures as one of my primary texts in my PhD thesis, but that's all academic stuff. I mean, I talked about silences, when silences speak more than words. And there are a few diary entries where Rutka just writes nothing. So it's just like February 5th, nothing, 6th, nothing, 7th, nothing. It's that. But then when I became the storyteller, I mean, when I read the diary, I kind of sympathized with Rutka. But when I begin to narrate her story as being Rutka, I mean, it's so powerful that you can almost empathize with her. Secondly, storytelling lifts off these words from the pages and brings it to life. That's what I feel. And of course, you talked about the choices. Yes, there are many, many more incidents that Rutka writes in her diary, and there are many more horrific events that she writes about in detail. I left that out because I wanted to create a balance and bring out what was the highlight for me. It was the indifference. I mean, she being a 14-year-old girl And she is so wise. She has such a lot of wisdom that she's writing and she knows that she's indifferent. She's indifferent to the world. I mean, and then the turmoil of her emotions. She likes Janek, but when he shows a superiority, she doesn't like him. But then again, she gives way. Okay, she likes him. When the friends tease her, when the reality sinks in and she says, okay, perhaps more. Then when her friends come over, somebody ignores her. She's a typical teenager. But then on the other hand, when she sees those abnormalities in the ghetto, she perfectly describes that. So there is, a turbulence of her emotions that I wanted to bring up in my storytelling. So that's how the process, it was a long process, and I must say it was difficult for me to choose certain parts and leave out the others. But at the end, I think the bigger things matter. So for me, it was showing her indifference and secondly, simultaneously keeping a track of the turbulence of her emotions.
Thank you, Mehak, so much. I think you said it so well that here she's expressing, right, this distance. She feels like she's becoming hardened like a person in army, and yet she feels so much and she cares so deeply. Yes. And she's going through all of that at once.
Yes.
Such a human experience and such a gifted young woman to write, like most of us can't write, in our 40s yes. and 50s. She writes as a 14-year-old. And I think that you, Dr. Burza, yes. Really with your intellect and abilities are such a match for the kind of person that she was growing up to be and should have been able to become. So it's incredibly moving having you who, yes, are from a different country and a different culture, and you're not Jewish. And yet this is so personal, not only academic to you. So thank you for bringing just your layer upon layer of knowledge and wisdom and talents to us. And I really feel Rutka's spirit here. Blessed to hear your version of her story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we are now going to allow Mehak to take over the role of being the interviewer, and she's going to initiate the next introduction to Professor Zahava Scherz so that we can get to know her and hear what Zahava's experience is as she got to know her sister through her diary.
And Zahava, as I spotlight you, take yourself off mute because you're on mute.
Welcome, Professor Zahava.
Hi, Mehak.
It's an absolute honor to have you here with us. So for those who don't know yet, Professor Zahava is the half-sister of Rutka, the story of whom I just narrated. Dr. Zahava Scherz has a BSc in chemistry, an MSc in biophysics, and a doctorate in science education. As a faculty member at the Wiesbaden Institute since 1984, she conducts research and development in the fields of artificial intelligence, learning skills in science, attitudes and perceptions about science, professional development of science, leading teachers and professional learning communities. Her program, Learning Skills for Science, has been adapted in thousands of schools in England and other countries. Dr. Scherz had established and directed the Israeli National Center for Science Technology Teachers. She teaches graduate courses and has co-supervised 14 graduate students. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Scherz. So I'll begin with the first and the obvious question. How did you discover about Rutka?
So first of all, thank you, Mehak, for your story, which got me very emotional. And I feel that you discovered many, many facets of Rutka that I didn't know. So thank you very much. Second, please call me Zahava and not Professor, because I am here as Zahava, as Rutka's sister. And how did I first discover about Rutka? Well, I was born in Israel to my parents, Hannah and Yaakov Laskier. And when I was 14, as a 14-year-old girl like Rutka, I was very curious and not very obedient. And I was start looking around the house. I discovered behind the dresses an album. And the album looked like I've never seen it before. So I opened it, and there were pictures that I never seen before, and they were not from Israel. They were from there, from the diaspora, from Poland. And I could recognize my father, but there were two children, and I looked at them, and you have seen the picture before, the girl and the small boy, and I thought, who are they? And what is my father doing there? And so on and so forth. So I decided that I went back to the album, and another day passed, and then I decided that I will confront my father. And I came to here with the album, and I asked him, who are these people? And who is this girl who looks so much like me? And just to let you know that I knew that my father passed Auschwitz. He had a number on his arm. We didn't have any family except my mother, my father, and me. But he had sisters and brothers, but I didn't know anything else. And then when I asked him, he said, yes, I was married before Second World War. I had a wife and two children. The girl is Rutka. And all the three of them didn't survive Auschwitz. I am the only one who survived. And as you can guess, it was a big shock for me. And I didn't ask more, and he didn't tell more. So the days passed, and I felt very sympathetic and sorry for my father and for the fact that he lost two children. And I felt very lucky that I am here in a safe place in Israel. I made the calculation that I am 20 years younger than Rutka, and that's all. But all of a sudden, after several more 14 years, I got married. I was pregnant with a daughter, and when she was born, I decided that I will call it Ruth, after the name of Ruth.
Wow. So when the second question that stems from this would be, when did you start telling your daughter about the Holocaust, and when she learned about her aunt, what was her reaction?
Well, it is, in Israel, you learn a lot about the Holocaust since you're in kindergarten in different levels. And she knew, and my father told her, because he got to know her, that they liked each other a lot. She knew about the Holocaust. She knew that we lost the whole family. And I guess she knew, yes. I told her and my son Ishai about Rutka and her brother Henyush and all of that. I think, also for me, Rutka, on those days, she was the daughter of my father. I mean, I didn't know anything about her. Ruti didn't know anything about her, and she was the daughter of my father that didn't survive, and I was feeling very, very sad on it. Until, and maybe this will be your next question, I discovered, or the diary was discovered to the world.
Yes, so you guessed it right, Zahava. So the next question is, and I'm sure everybody in the audience wants to know, that how was Rutka's diary discovered, and who called you up, and how did you land up with the original copy, and your entire journey about that you undertook to get the copy of the diary?
It was 1906, no, sorry, 2006. And I was just came back from a long journey, a professional journey to England when my book was launched about learning skills for science. And all of a sudden, I am getting a phone call from a man that introduced himself with a name that I knew from my father that was such a family name, Menachem Lieber. Now he was Laor, but he was the son of Lieber. I knew somebody like that existed, that my father used to know him. And he asked me if I am the daughter of Jacob Laskier, Yaakov Laskier, and I said yes. And he said, do you know that you had a sister by the name of Rutka? And I said, yes, I know. I confirmed, and then he said, listen, like this was, I remember it exactly, January 13, the date of January 6, a diary was discovered in Poland, in Benjin, and when we read it, we realized that this is the diary of Rutka Laskier. We wanted to know what, and we read it, we think it is, the Polish people found it, read it, and they think it's beautifully written. It is like the Polish Anne Frank, and they wanted to find the family. They made some research, and they came to me. Now, of course, I was thinking that I'm going to faint, and the next thing they said, I want to read it. Send it to me by email, and I will get it translated. I want to read it. They said, wow, now I will know more about my family. And so he said, yes, they will send it to you. There is a guy named Adam Shidlovsky. He is a journalist and is working at the municipality of Benjin. Benjin is my father's and Rutka's family town. And he said that, and we made contact. And then I started to talk to Adam. I was talking in English, he was talking half English, but we had a translator. And then he said, listen, we are going to publish it. We want you to come to the launching in Benjin, and I will send you by mail. The diary, just the copy of the diary. I got it in Israel translated, and that was the moment that I started to know my sister. She was no more the daughter of my father, she started to be my sister. I went to Benjin, and there was a very nice launching with the mayor, with the president, with the ambassador of Israel. And I insisted that I want the diary to come to Israel because that's what my father and Rutka's father would love to be. And after 2 years, yes, he did come to Yad Vashem, translated to Hebrew and to English. And since then, as you said before, translated to 13 more languages. And I started my voyage on the footsteps of Rutka. And the rest is history for me and for the world. Since then, a documentary was made on her life by Alex Marengo, BBC in London. A play is going to be made in Broadway pretty soon, maybe you will hear. And Amy Langer is sitting here in the Zoom audience. Hi, Amy. She's the producer with her husband, David Schwartz. And Rutka became part of my family life, part of my life, and part of all other relatives, far relatives that are still existing.
Wow. Could you just elaborate more on Rutka's timeline? I mean, about her journey, her birth in Krakow, and then the shift to Benjin.
Okay. Well, maybe I start a little bit before, because Rutka was part of Laskier family that was a very religious, Haredi, very, very religious Jewish people. But my father, Jacob, on the age of 17, he was born on 1900, the beginning of the 20th century. And when he was 17, he decided that he wants to immigrate to Israel as a pioneer. He left the family, he became secular, and there was still the Second World War, God forbid, the Second World War, and he made his way to Israel with 5 other pioneers, and he thought that that will be his life. He got sick, and he had to go back to Poland. Then he met his first wife, Dorka, from the Hampel family. They married, and Rutka and Heniush were born. Rutka was born in Krakow, which is not far away from Benjin. I don't know why she was born in Krakow. Maybe they lived there for a while as a young couple, but she spent most of her life in Benjin. She went to a gymnasium, which is a high school, a private high school, and she joined the youth movement of Zionism. And we believe that she was part of a rebel kind of a youth movement that was later. We don't know for sure what was it, but there also in the diary there are some mysterious of her part in what was going on during World War II. I just want to mention a very important part, that the diary was found thanks to Stanislava Sapinska, who was Rutka's friend. She used to live with the family in the ghetto apartment where Rutka and the family were living. And she used to visit. The Nazis evacuated the family, the Polish family, and they put many Polish Jews in the same apartment. They had one room in this apartment. And Stanislava, one year, 6 years older than Rutka, used to come and visit, and they became friends. And Rutka told her that she's writing a diary. Rutka told her that she knows that she probably will not survive the war. And if they will be transferred to Auschwitz, they decided that she will hide the diary in the staircase between 2 steps. And unfortunately, that was what happened. And after the war, Stanislava came back to the apartment and found the diary and kept her for herself for 60 years. And only in 2006, during a family meeting, she told her nephew, who was asking about the war, "What do you know about the war?" And went to the other room and showed him the diary. And after 2 weeks, he came back. He was shocked. He was very, very moved. And he said, "You cannot keep it to yourself. This is history. This is part of history." And then she gave it to Adam Shinglovsky, who was very, very influential in putting it into public. I met her. And they also, we became friends. Nonetheless, we didn't have any language to speak with. And I went to her 100th birthday to Beijing. It was a big celebration. She's a wonderful woman. And since the diary was published, she went from school to school and was interviewed and told about Rutka. And we were hugged and kissed whenever we met. We met like 4 times. And then she died at the age of 101. And God bless her name. So this is only part of the journey that I did after Rutka.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Zahava. But now, I think after hearing you, we all would be interested to see that particular clip from the documentary, The Secret Diary of the Holocaust, which, when you enter the apartment and then Adam shows you the exact place where the diary was hid. So I would request Deborah to play the clip of the documentary.
Wow. And where did they live? In which floor? In this floor?
Next floor.
Second floor.
Second floor.
Several Jewish families, including Rutka's, were made to share this house.
I'm Zahava Scherz.
The Nazis forced the Polish family who had owned it before the war to find somewhere else to live. Their daughter, Stanislava, would come back occasionally to check up on the place.
Kiedy Niemcy szli na obiad, to ja skoczyłam do domu zawsze tam zobaczyć, co się w tym domu moim dzieje. I tam właśnie na podwórku w swoim domu spotkałam Rutkę. No i od tego się zaczęła nasza znajomość.
To jest ten pokój, w którym mieszkali Laskierowie. Te warunki, które Laskierowie mieli, no i tak możemy dzisiaj określić jako w miarę dobre. W którym mieszkała Rutka. Rutka mieszkała ze swoją mamą, ze swoim tatą, z braciszkiem Joachimem.
Mum gets upset and screams at me because of Hennius. He's a sweet little thing, but sometimes he can be pretty obnoxious. You can't say anything in front of him because he goes and tells everything to the old folks.
I think the diary was a spot of privacy for Rutka. I imagine that she would write in the diary when the apartment was empty. I think you needed to have somebody to talk to, and maybe those days she had 2 people. She had the diary and she had Stanislava Sapinska.
Rutka była piękna, piękna dziewczyna była, zwłaszcza oczy, 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 oczy. Więc ona wiedziała, że ona jest ładna.
Although I don't usually look good in photographs, I'm in fact quite pretty. I'm tall, thin, my legs aren't too bad. I've big black eyes, short black hair, nicely outlined lips. And there's my portrait.
I'm very curious to see where did she hide the diary.
Proszę, pokażę ci to miejsce. Bardzo proszę.
Rutka zdawała sobie z tego sprawę, że kiedyś to może nastąpić. Że chciałaby, żeby ten pamiętnik pozostał. I jej pokazałam to miejsce.
To są schody, co teraz już murowane, ale w czasie getta były drewniane i możemy przypuszczać i z tego, co Stasia mówiła, że połączeniu już ostatniego stopnia z podłogą była naturalna nisza, którą można było wsunąć dosyć cienki. Tak, on został wsunięty pomiędzy schody a podłogę.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you, guys. That was amazing. And Zahava, I'd heard Mehak's story before. I hadn't heard yours, and that, wow. So now is the time when we have a chance to have some questions from the audience. So if you have questions for Mehak or Zahava, and yes, thank you, Jennifer. We'll share that link. I have that in the script. We'll share the link to the movie at some point. So if you have questions for Zahava or for Mehak, please put it in the chat, and I will transfer them to or read them to them. I'm going to spotlight Jennifer too, so she can come join us in this conversation. I actually have a question to start with, which is a question from us as, storytelling coaches, listening to Mehak. Zahava, can you tell us what it feels like to listen to Mehak personify your sister? Be your sister in first person as if she were Rutka.
Well, it was a very different experience for me. And I must confess that after like 3 minutes, I could really identify myself with Rutka, which is Mehak. I think she did a wonderful job. And I kind of forgot that this is Mehak, and it looks like Rutka is talking to me again from the diary, from the TV, from the computer. It is very exciting, especially because I know Mehak now for 3 years, only from Zoom, but we corresponded. I read her PhD thesis, etc., etc., etc. And all of a sudden, to listen to this, it was yet another experience. And thank you so much, Mehak, for this. Really, thank you.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. We have a question.
May I ask a follow-up question to that, Deborah?
Okay, yes, we have a question from the chat, but we'll get to it in a minute.
Okay, so I'll just ask this one because it goes to the other. So Mehak, knowing that you've worked on this story many times, you've performed it once before for a shorter version for our community. And what is it like for you to have Zahava here, knowing that she is the sister of Rutka as you're embodying? So the flip side of Deborah's question. It's one thing to be witnessed by all of us, but to know Zahava, this is Zahava's sister.
Wow. So I think it was, I think the credit goes to you first, Jennifer, because when we started our coaching, when I started my coaching with Jennifer, and out of the way, I just said, oh, by the way, I know Professor Scherz because she is Rutka's half sister, and I had an interview with her for my PhD thesis. And suddenly Jennifer said, why don't we do one thing? Why don't we bring her also into the program? And I was like, wow, why didn't I think that before? And then of course, the first time when I recited the story, the first time, I was a bit anxious about, oh, am I getting this correct? Would Rutka have done this or that, or what were the expressions? Because Zahava also doesn't, she hasn't seen her, and she's seen her only through the diary. But then, there's this hint of authenticity. So then I think I consider myself very fortunate that we have Zahava with us, and it just gives me more passion to be Rutka, and to inculcate, because I have interviewed Zahava and she has told me what, through her father and through her narration, the diary, what Rutka did, what she did not do. And I think that was another coaching of mine, going side by side. So that was an informal training sort of thing, and yours was the formal one. So I had the best of both worlds. Incredibly blessed and honored to be with you and Zahava. And I think I am also talking to my elder sister, and I would have narrated this to my elder sister if I had been Rutka.
Thank you, Mehak. Thank you for all the time and energy and craftswomanship you put into this creation or co-creation with Rutka, because that's what really happened, right? She created it, but then you became a collaborator, and I think that you gave it all the more blessing. Yeah.
So we have a question from the chat, and I think it's a very important question. What educational programs are out there at the moment using this diary?
Mehak, you want, or I'll take it? Okay. I visited Poland, and in the very same, several times, in the very same documentary, you can see also two classes in Beijing. One is in high school, in the same school Rutka used to go, and then it is not Jewish anymore, etc., because there are no Jews in Beijing, but it's a very good high school. And another class which was, I think, 10 years old, no, 10 or 12 years old children, and they are both studying Rutka as part of the curriculum. They also prepared, they read parts for me, and you can see it in the documentary. So I don't know by and large in Poland, but I know that there are several, or even I can say many schools in Poland that study this book. And politics is changing and going ups and downs, so I don't know exactly what it is right now, but they do. Now in Israel, there are some schools, it is not part of the curriculum, not at all, but many teachers who read the book and who feel very close to it, bringing usually toward the Holocaust Day on May in Israel, they bring in, and I am invited to many schools in Israel and interviewed and talk about Ruta, etc., etc. Other places in the world, nothing that I know of. I mean, we used to communicate with several schools, but it is very very, very sporadic.
Are there resources out there for teachers who want to be able to use this in their schools that will help them, or they just need to get the diary and come talk to us about how to tell these stories? Well,
in Yad Vashem, there are many courses about the Shoah, as you know, as telling the story about the Shoah. Rutka's diary is one of them. And when people are coming to seminar, either Israeli students or international students, teachers, if they are getting in touch with it, and it is upon their decision what and how to use it. But I really don't know in other countries what's going on, because it was translated to Japanese and to Russian and French and Italian, etc., etc., etc. Nothing that I'm aware of. Nobody contacted me. In America, there are very few schools, and I hope that the play will help to bring also the awareness on the Holocaust and on Rutka's story to the American people. And I think this is part of the view of Amy as well.
It sounds, Madine, like you need to create some educational materials for people to use it. And when you do, please let the rest of us know so we can spread it and tell everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. This is now that I am slowing down with my scientific work. This is part of my goal now, to make more of the story for the sake of education.
And I'd just like to add, first of all, Deborah just put in the chat the link to the film, which I cannot recommend highly enough. The book, the film, coupled with the conversation we're all having now, and of course with the upcoming play. I mean, these are ways to really get a much fuller look of this. So Zahava, I am also thinking of the teacher who's only features in the film just a little bit because the focus, of course, is the teens. But that the Polish teacher in that high school was, choosing to create a curriculum, and that there were obviously very high expectations and quite bright, committed students by their responses. So I'm also wondering if we can learn from her, since there's already a connection, because she's part of the story too, right? Her choice to share this with her students.
I'm sure I know her. It's Anita, right? We talk about Anita.
I'm not sure of her name, but you would know. Yeah.
Yeah. About the female teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know her, and I'm sure that she will, and she speaks English beautifully, and she's very, very remarkable woman. I'm sure she will collaborate, and will do whatever we'll ask, and more than that. She's also bringing every year a kind of an exhibition about the Jews in Benjin and the story of Rutka. Very creative, every year something different, and I know another teacher like that. So yeah,
fantastic.
Let's get them on board.
Wonderful. We have a hand raised. Judith, you want to unmute and ask your question? You have to unmute.
As Judith's unmuting, I'll just let you know that Judith is a well-known storyteller, also a Jewish storyteller, like several of us here in the States. So Judith, if you can unmute, you can speak. Maybe we'll come back to her. I'm not sure what's happening.
Or Judith, if you can't, you can write in the chat and I'll pass it along. Other questions in the chat? Jennifer, what else do you have that you want?
Yes, I did have a question about, and I realize not everybody has seen the film, but we all just did witness that beautiful piece, which was incredibly meaningful. What was your experience, Zahava, in not only learning, of course, the facts and meeting the friends of Rutka and the Stanislava, am I saying her name correctly? The neighbor who became her friend, who had to leave the ghetto, and not only that, and not only even being there, though I'd love to hear about all those things, but specifically about seeing that this became a film and how the film was produced. So I want to hear about that, but the follow-up question is there anything you wish people would know that maybe wasn't in the film, that just didn't make it through the film? So that's mine.
Well, first of all, the film was really a big experience in my life, because we met twice with the team, and Alex Marengo was wonderful. So first in the documentary, he interviewed me, and he planned all the scenery and went to all the places, and then he came with the whole team and the photographer and all the audio, video, all of this, and we went to Poland and in Israel, and we made the film. Now it was one shot, no rehearsal. It is interviewed and I spoke, and what you hear is what I said, the first shot. Then of course they edited and etc. etc. There were many things that are not included because we didn't know it then. It was like 14 years ago or 13 years ago that the movie was made. And I would wish that they would be included. First of all, the fact that Rutka and Anne Frank were born in the same day. That was discovered only in the same date, not only in 1929, and I got it as an evidence only a year ago. But I learned it because I heard in the radio that one day is the birthday of Anne Frank, and it was June 12th. And I didn't know what Rutka birthday, but I know that she was born in Shavuot. Shavuot is it's a
May or
holiday
June.
here, Pentecost, I think.
Right, May or
It's
June, right.
Yeah, May or June. I Googled it, and I found that they were born in the same day, 12th of June, 1929. So
Wow.
this was kind of something very mysterious for me. And they were both didn't make it, and they were both died in the concentration camps. Yet another thing that I would really like to show up is but maybe this is another documentary, is all the three life of my father, and how this person raised me and Rutka with 20 years of difference in two different countries, and then knew my Ruti, his granddaughter, and never confused between the three of us. I mean, it is a miracle for me, and how I was born as a very healthy, emotionally healthy girl with all these stories behind him and my mother. So for me, it's a miracle, and that's something that I want to investigate within myself.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Oh, we're so glad to get to be with you and hear straight from you. Thank you.
Thank you for giving
I
me
have
the
a question
opportunity.
for Mehak. Mehak, tell us about how you first came across Rutka's diary and how it fits into your research.
Okay. So my research basically focuses on the literary representations of the Holocaust, and for that, I've taken up memoirs and diaries. Now, but obvious is when I told my supervisor about this, and all she could help me with was Anne Frank's diary. And then I looked up, I read Alexander Zapruder's salvaged pages, where she mentions, apart from Anne Frank, there are various other diarists. And then I looked up the archives of the USHMM, and then I came across this diary, Rutka's diary, and then I explored more about it. And it was so fascinating that a girl born on the same day, she was called Polish Anne Frank, and then they were pretty much similar to each other, but yet so different. And this was the first question that was asked in my PhD thesis defense. How would you differentiate between Rutka's diary and Anne Frank's diary? Then I told them that Anne Frank was writing from a very privileged position. In the secret annex, she was getting help from the helpers. She was celebrating birthdays. Yet the fair was there, but yet in a quite privileged position. And yet for Rutka, it was all around. I mean, what she has tried to write in her diary is the interweaving of the normal and the abnormal. And she's done it so beautifully. Similarities, of course, yes, same birthday. They, out of both the families, only the fathers survived. And then the father published Anne Frank's diary, Otto Frank, and then yet we have Zahava publishing her sister's diary. So of course, similarities are there, but yet they are so different. One is from a privileged position, and one is writing with such wisdom. Both of them, they are aware about their bodily changes, their mental changes. Both of them are in turbulence, but yet they're so different. She's writing from the Benjin ghetto, whereas Anne Frank is writing from the hidden annex.
So,
and of course, for my thesis, it's way beyond it. Yes, because there I've explored, how the silences could speak more, and the concept of what Rabbi Harold Kushner says about all this is when bad things happen to good people, and then you lose the faith in God. But yet, at the end, we have to realize that in this vast tapestry called life, there are both ups and downs. So all this is like the theory part.
was Rutka's diary the only diary you concentrated in your PhD, or were there several other people that you were also?
No, there is one more. It's Mary Burke's diary. So yes, there's one more, and she was writing from the Lord's Ghetto. Then she was also in a privileged position, which probably facilitated getting papers ready for them very quickly. And then there's the ghetto, and then and hers is very peculiar diary, because I've taken it up as a transition between a diary and a memoir. So because Mary Burke calls her diary a diary memoir. Because when she landed up in the United States, she corrected few pieces of her diary, and each diary entry has a separate heading, as a memoir would have. So they are diary entries, but they are chapters as well. So that is kind of a transition between to explore the fictionality of memoirs.
So I have one last question, and then Jennifer has another question. What of all the things, I know you looked at a lot of different things, of all the things that you looked at, what was it that drew you to Rutka when it came time to pick a story to tell? What was it that drew you to Rutka in particular?
Two things: her precise and concise use of emotions. It's almost like oxymorons. You have a good day and a bad day, but she has good paragraphs and bad paragraphs. She's happy in one moment, she's sad at one moment, and it's the same day. It's a lot. I mean, being 28 this time, I cannot write such a diary. I mean, there is so much going on in her mind. And still she feels, because there is a point in the diary where she says, I can't bring I hope I'm bringing it out correctly. I'm expressing my emotions correctly, because there's so much turmoil in me that I don't know what to write and what to leave. And I think it's been rightly said that diaries, as compared to memoirs, they record past events, but the diaries record the movement of history. And that's what Rutka has done so well. So it's just a diary of 60 pages, one of the shortest diaries.
Incredible.
There is so much she has to say.
I have a follow-up question for you, Mehak, and then also another one for Zahava, but we also want to invite everybody to please write in the chat, and Deborah, you can interrupt me so that we get from the audience. So as far as now I'm putting the kind of the storytelling focus again. When you're lifting the words, they're so rich, right? There's so much to delve into in those pages. And yet we talked earlier, Mehak and I, about this idea of her putting, her own way of telling into those words. So it's like they're expanding. It's like the air is filling something that is flatter, right? And so how are you conscious of certain choices that you are making in your expression, in your pacing, in the way you would look off at certain times? Or is this more of an intuitive, you're such a natural teller? Where do you think some of those decisions came from in the how to tell?
I think, of course, first, I'll never shy away from saying that the credit goes to you, because I remember when I first recited and narrated the story, it was so rich. You were so rich with your suggestions that, okay, here is a long pause, here you need to take a short pause. So I think that kind of helped me, that paved the way for me, what I recited now or narrated now. And then secondly, I think I've read the diary now for like more than 24 times. I know it by heart. Any page anywhere, I know it, which page number.
It's amazing.
So after that, it just comes with, reading and rereading and rereading. But then when you begin to just rehearse, I also rehearse when you don't coach me. I mean, I just keep the coaching practice going. And then when I'm also an educator. So when I started with this storytelling, I incorporated that into my teaching as well. So instead of just giving them the facts, I build up a small story for my students. And it has just changed the way I teach. And I think that sort of added to my storytelling technique. And it has changed me so much as a teacher. And then earlier, they are just writing down passively what I tell them. Even if I tell them India is the 3rd most populated country, they'll just write it down. They'll just not bother to check. But now when I incorporate them and I build a small story out of facts, and they're like jaw-dropping and looking at me, and then I tell them, okay, now write. So it has changed me as a teacher. And I think credit goes to you again.
Thank you, Mehak. And I just want to say, again, it's one thing to suggest something to somebody. It's another thing to be able to embody it, take that and apply that, and that's your willingness to go there, not only with your brilliant mind, but with your very competent emotional landscape that is inside of you. That really is where storytelling, comes. So thank you so much, Mehak. Deborah, I know you had a question from Judith.
So Judith is having some computer issues, but she passed her question along to me. She's interested in knowing more about the upcoming theater program, the Broadway program that you were talking about. Can you tell us more about that, Zahava?
Can you repeat the question?
She's interested in knowing more about the upcoming theater interpretation, the Broadway production that you were talking about the story. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, the theater program is not mine. Is Amy still there?
Yes, Amy, you want to come on and unmute and tell us a little bit about this project?
That would be amazing.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wasn't expecting to speak. Both of you, by the way, thank you all so much for this. This is, I wrote in there, every time I hear about the story, I just learned so much. And thank you both, all of you. So we have this musical in development. We went to Zahava and we said, look, we want to do an indie rock musical. So we take contemporary music, and Zahava was like amazing about it. And it wasn't until she came and heard what we were doing that we knew we were on the right path. And then when I say indie rock, it's more, how can I say, it's not like rock and roll, but it's contemporary music. And we have these incredible musicians from formerly of Pearl and the Beard. And so they have come in and just done such a beautiful job. And so this has been in development. We partnered with a performing arts school, since a lot of the characters are teenagers. And we did a 5-week workshop where the kids were just, I have a video that the kids made for us on how much they learned and how much they connected to it, because it was current music. And that's really where we want to go, is taking these young people, teens and 20s, and really helping them, bringing them into understanding this in a very different, more contemporary way. So the next step is we're doing an industry reading coming up, and then after that, a theater, and then hopefully transfer here.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are dealing with the real Holocaust aspects of it? Because there's as Mehak showed us, there's there's the very teenagery part, and you can totally do that into a musical. But then there's this other aspect that she's dealing with that seems to me would be much more difficult to translate into this kind of medium. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, there's her inner world where sometimes when it's, as a musical, when it's unbearable to speak, she was pouring this into her diary, and so these become songs. So there's a lot of inner work that's being done in the songs, and a lot of the work, like the action at the soccer field, that's done through music. It's heavy, but it like I said, sometimes when you can't speak, the music helps bring you in emotionally.
Wow. Well,
Incredible.
we are very excited to hear about that. So I hope you keep us posted, and we'll keep our mailing list posted as you tell us what's happening with that. That is super exciting.
And I apologize if I wasn't so eloquent with my words right now. I wasn't expecting to come on.
You sounded great.
You were perfect. Jennifer,
Got me interested.
Yes, we're all very excited. Jennifer had another question for Zahava, and then I think we need to wrap up. So let's have one last question.
Yeah, I'm hoping this will actually be a good ending question. Back to Beijing, hope I'm saying it somewhat correctly, the small city in Poland in which Rutka was mostly raised. I am wondering, obviously you have this connection henceforward, right, with this town. You knew about it as a young person, but now you've been there and you know more of Rutka's inner world and outer world. What is your relationship like with the town, the non-Jewish and Jewish people who were there, particularly the man who survived, who came to Israel in the earlier years pre-war or just as the war was starting? I'd love to hear that and where you kind of plan to go from there in that relationship.
Well, Benjin, as I said, there are no non-Jewish people in Benjin. But there is Adam Shidlovsky, who really puts the Jewish tradition and the Jewish life up front from that time. Nonetheless, he's not Jewish and no relationship to Jewish people. So there are visits of ex-Benjin people and their ancestor, third and second generation, and many visits of Israelis and Americans and other people who go to Poland on the footstep of the Holocaust are also stopping there. And what happened that it brought to the city the awareness about the Holocaust and about Rutka. And the amazing thing is that they feel, and I'm saying it with all the respect, that Rutka is theirs. You know, Rutka is a Benjiner. She is theirs. She is part of the city, which is very nice because and by the way, they're learning a lot about the Holocaust. It is a city, it's not a city, it's a town that goes back to the 50s or maybe to the 30s of the previous century. It's very laid back. The Jewish people were 60% of the population, and now there are none. So all the culture, the Jewish culture, is no more there. Adam keeps a coffee shop. He calls them Jerusalem Cafe, which is amazing. And people are coming and drinking coffee. I think it's the only coffee shop in Benjin. And I'm coming to visit every now and then. But I don't feel any relation with Poland or Benjin, except of this. I'm very much Israeli. My family is Israeli, and that's my nationality. I don't know if I answered your question, but it was very nice to get to know where did they all live and to see the house where they lived before the war, which was very well to do. Now it is almost teared down. And to see the apartment, as you have seen in the documentary, which still exists in the very same neighborhood, the very same shape as it used to be. And to go to the Fusip. And I have a graveyard of my grandfather who died during the war, but he was buried. So this is also very
Thank you,
emotional.
Zahava. Thank you, Mehak. Thank you both so much for sharing from your heart. Oh my goodness,
Thank you.
Deborah.
Thank you so much. We're really sad to have to close this out, but it's, you know, it's almost half past. So I want to thank everybody for coming, for listening to this. This was an amazing program. If you want to know more about what we do at Teach the Shoah, I am putting our website into the chat. And if you want to support us, support programs like this, I put the donate link in the chat too. We appreciate anything you are interested in helping us with. Keep an eye out on your email for our next program, which will be at the end of August, early September. One of our, what we call an Exploring Their Stories workshop, which will show you how to do what Mehak has done here, to take the stories of the Holocaust and get Jennifer's guidance in figuring out, in understanding how to tell them. And as Mehak has told you, Jennifer is an amazing coach and guide. So keep your eye out for that, and check out our website. And I'm going to put everybody's emails in the chat. So if you want to get in touch with us, and again, thank you for coming. Jennifer, anything else we?
Yeah, I just want to really invite you to know that this, even though tonight was a performance / talk, and really kind of watching the four of us interact for the most part, most of our programs, at least 2/3 of our programs, are very interactive. They're very much like workshops. And this is a community. You know, this is one piece of our community, and it's a community of practice. So we don't only come to witness, so that's a huge part. We also come to become the witnesses of the witnesses, so that we get to pass on the story. So please, we need you, from whatever background you're from, wherever country, whatever your talents are, your aptitude that you think you have or don't have towards storytelling, you can do this. And without you, the stories won't reach all the people they could reach if you were one of the tellers. So please become part of our community and write us with any questions. Thanks, Mehak and Zahava. You're wonderful, wonderful human beings.
Okay, there was one last question that I will answer. There will be a recording, but it is only going to be available for a short time to people who registered but weren't able to come. Actually, you know what? I have to ask Mehak and Zahava. I meant to ask you this beforehand. Is that okay with you if we put up the recording for people?
Sure.
So not
Absolutely.
This, if you have somebody in particular who wasn't here who you want to share it with, let me know and we can discuss it. Yes, you can watch it again. You can absolutely watch it again.
It will be for a limited time, though.
Right, it'll be
have
up,
it set for a few
for a
weeks.
limited time. So so please watch it in the next couple of weeks. But in the next couple of days, or the latest next week, I will be sending out to all the registrants a link to that, to a YouTube of that.
And Deborah, I always like to invite people, if anyone is interested, obviously in storytelling about the Holocaust, this is the place to be. If you are also interested in Jewish stories in general, I do run facilitated groups where we work on any kind of Jewish story. Again, you can come from any background. If you're interested in that, you can privately write me or write to Deborah later, and we can get you on that totally separate mailing list.
Right. You are now on my mailing list. If you don't want to be on my mailing list, well, unsubscribe immediately or write to me and tell me, then I won't put you on my mailing list. But having registered for this, everybody goes on, and so you will get information about these programs that we are doing coming up. Yay.
Thanks.
So good night, everybody. Good afternoon if you're in the States. Good morning if you're like me, all the way on the other side of the world. And I hope we will see you again in an upcoming program. Thank you so much for being here.
Lehitraot, Laila Tov.
Thank you, Lita. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.